Okay, all right. Up.
Hi, everybody. I'm Craig Mezowitz. I'm the host of this week's episode of The Conversationalists. We are a group of world-class, experienced audio event speakers that create quality shows to encourage debate, entertain, and educate. Our goal is to have a great conversation. My co-hosts today are George Silverman, and the other co-host is Samantha Postman. Our
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
panelists today are Jennifer Navarrete, Rose Horowitz, and Dan Roeder. So we're going to start by letting the panelists introduce themselves in the way that they see fit. So George, you're up first.
Hey, how you doing? I'm a ex-psychologist, mostly interested in cognitive psychology and metacognition. I'm the mind skills guy. I concentrate on the skills that people use across all areas for success and happiness. And I've been very interested in AI for years now. One of the first people to sign up for OpenAI when it went public, for GPT-3, I mean. And I've been using it for close to 2 years, and very excited by its possibilities and very sensitive to its limitations.
That's awesome. Okay, go ahead, Samantha.
Hey, everyone. I'm Samantha Postman. As you heard, I'm from Canada. I'm a serial entrepreneur and business consultant. At the moment, I'm about to start a new product for consulting for startup companies and founders looking for an extra set of eyes on what they're doing to help them move forward. And I'm really interested in ChatGPT because I definitely see it as a way to 10 times yourself. I'd like to 100 times myself, but hey, I'll take ChatGPT. And I'm currently building a product actually for founders and CEOs and entrepreneurs to help them leverage ChatGPT so that they can 10 times themselves.
That's awesome, Samantha. Jennifer, you're up.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jennifer Navarrete. I am e-podcaster on Web 2 and Web 3. I'm a podcast producer who's been podcasting since 2005 because I absolutely love the audio medium. And I am a Web 3 evangelist because the more that I look at where the future of content creation and media goes, it just looks to me like it's on Web 3. And AI is a fascinating thing because the way I approach AI is strictly from the opportunity to really enhance or expand my own work. So I kind of think of AI as my second brain.
I like that. Next up is Rose Horowitz. Go ahead, Rose.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I am a Pulitzer-nominated journalist and the founder of Woman to Follow, which became a global hashtag that had 12 million views in its first 2 weeks. And I've been experimenting with ChatGPT and see great possibilities and also dangerous possibilities too. And I think there's a lot of ethics involved in using ChatGPT, but I am interested in it. I'm looking at it and I'm exploring it and love to be here and happy to be here.
Thanks, Rose. Dan, you're the last panelist today. Introduce yourself and then we'll jump right in.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Roeder, and I'm a special education teacher and chief academic officer for an international music nonprofit. And I am really interested in ChatGPT in the education space and how it can be leveraged. And then at this moment in history, just kind of being a ChatGPT and AI cheerleader and try and get it into the hands of students.
That's fantastic. So to reset the room, my name is Craig Mezowitz. I'm your host today at The Conversationalists. As I said earlier, I'm broadcasting live from the campus of Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. I am sitting underneath the Golden Dome, and we are going to go into part 2 of a conversation that we started last week on artificial intelligence. So we got enough response and the listener feedback was good enough that we are going to go into part 2. Our format is simple. The 6 of us are going to have a casual conversation like we were sitting around a fire pit. And after our conversation and questions, we're going to open it up to you, and then we'll take questions and answers. Our runtime is a hard 90 minutes, and we are ready to go. A little bit more about myself. I'm a farmer. I'm a soil specialist. I grow everything from ghost peppers to strawberries all year long inside. I've been using ChatGPT with my grandson, who was 6 when we started. He's now 7. I use it to generate his spelling words every week, and it has not failed me. So I gave the example last week. I don't think anybody should be afraid of it, and we're ready to go.
I have a
So,
couple of housekeeping details. First of
sure.
all, I have just upgraded my subscription to ChatGPT and have the new it's called ChatGPT Plus. So I want people to know that it's $20 a month. I signed up for it. I think it was yesterday or the day before. I was on it almost all day yesterday. It's unbelievable. What I would like to do is volunteer to some of the ideas that come up in this discussion. I can put them right into ChatGPT and let you know the answers. We could try experiments. We can do all kinds of other things. Also, we do have somebody in the audience who is a ChatGPT expert. She participated last week. So I would like to invite her to, if she has things that she would like to insert into the conversation without becoming the center of the conversation, because she's quite an expert. I would like to kind of break protocol and allow her to raise her hand in view of her expertise and the amount she contributed last week. I'll summarize what she said maybe a little later. Oh, good. Somebody promoted her to speaker already. That's good.
I
Good.
invited her
Excellent.
up, George. I invited her up as a speaker because of what
Yes.
you had said about how well she did last week,
I'd
and
love her to
I was
summarize what she said last
overwhelmed.
week, and then contributed as one of us. We're all learning together, and I'm sure she would include herself as one of the people who's still learning.
Absolutely.
So this is going to be a great conversation, I think. Go ahead.
I'm really
Yep.
excited.
So what's your first question,
So,
Greg?
well, let's have Jessica recap where she was last week, and then I have put together 3 questions, simple and some practice examples. Like you said, we can actually type them in on the go and get the answers. And then I just want to walk everybody through a couple of examples, and then we'll open it up for
Great.
questions.
And just to remind Jessica, what the thing I was talking about and most impressed was the giant in the locked room analogy.
Hello.
Also,
Absolutely.
sorry, Jessica, could you just give a quick introduction about who you are, just like we all did? That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Shea. My background is I've worked in the tech space for many years. I was a consultant, and I work with multiple AI startup, currently in one, and I help people with not just ChatGPT, but any sort of AI implementation. And so I have some understanding of the space.
Some understanding is ridiculously modest. Oh my goodness. I totally disagree with that, but the rest of it is true.
I'll recap what I talked about last week. I think last week I heard one of the question was people who are introduced to this new tool that's AI. It's not always clear what this new tool means. So I gave everybody kind of 3 mental models to think about how to think about AI if this is your first time using it. So the first concept is AI is electricity. So just like how electricity kind of brings a different modality, allow us to do a lot more comparing to the non-electricity years. In my mind, for business owners, I think AI as electricity is it's going to power this artificial intelligence as a service is going to power a lot of the future business that is to come. And it's a very smart idea to understand electricity and also understand its danger, right? Don't stick your hands into the plugins. And so what is the risk factor and risk profile looks like comparing to its benefit it can bring. So this is the first model for entrepreneurs is AI as electricity. And the second mental model is more for people who may not be familiar with the space, which is like AI as an assistant. So I think it's a danger to be over reliant to AI today. This might change really quickly, but I like to think about it as AI as assistant. You just hired a very smart, freshly out of college, really smart assistant, you can ask the system to do things like summarization and have it to like review email for you, but you probably wouldn't put your day-to-day or medical decision to this assistant today. So I think like for the technology we have today, it's a really good idea to think about AI as an assistant that will help you to do some of the fundamental work. But the final decision should still be in your hands, and you should be the person weighing out kind of the risk and benefit as the technology is today. I think that's going to change. And the last mental model, I also have a tweet on it
This is the
that I
one I
drew
love.
that I drew out because I think it helps a lot of people to think about how to prompt AI. So I call it the genius in the room model. So the idea is a lot of people thinks they're not really utilizing AI to its fullest because they don't know how to prompt it. And the best mental model that I have that help people is called the genius in the room. So imagine you have this really smart person sitting in a room, and the only way that you can communicate with this really, really smart person is to slip this little slither of paper under the door for this person to answer. And this is helpful because this genius does not understand your context. This person does not know your mental, like, how do you feel? Like, what material or reference they should look at before answering your very specific questions. So part of the prompting work is to make sure that you ask this genius the context that you have, the problem you're trying to solve, and even tell this genius, do you like the answer in bullet points, in a long sentence, or do you want it to write a JSON file to execute something for you? So being really clear about this genius in the room, providing the right context will be super helpful. It's a super helpful mental model for you to work with ChatGPT. So that's where we landed
I love
last
that
week. So I will just share that.
Yeah, I love that last model. It's like having a genius person in the room who's on the spectrum, who's kind of autistic, who doesn't quite get people or doesn't quite get how to relate to people, and it can come up with some clumsy but but brilliant things. So Craig, with that I think that's a wonderful backdrop for the discussion. Thanks, Jessica.
Jessica,
And jump in when you want.
Jessica, thank you. Well, Jessica, thank you so much. But because I'm live here at Notre Dame, you guys, I've got the Cathedral Prep hockey team listening. They're from Erie, Pennsylvania, and they're here to win a competition this week. And they just want to say hello to all you guys and give you a short chant. So ready? Go.
Your loans got through life. Chance is fair. Chance is fair. Chance to our stride. Chance to our stride. Chance to our dare. Chance to our dare. We shall win. We shall win. Let be by code. Let be by code. Faith on our high. Faith on our high. We shall lose. We shall lose. Stand by. Cheers. Let's go by. Cheers. Go by. Day by day. Day by day. Get better and better. Better and better. We can't be beat. We can't be beat. Won't be beat. Won't be beat. Prep on 3. 1, 2, 3, prep.
And what's your name? You're the captain of the team. Brady Twickman. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks. The spontaneity of audio only, right?
Yeah, they'll love that they got all their families here and they're all dressed up. And the kid that just was the captain wore my number 74.
Cool.
So that's kind of a coincidence.
As good as they look.
Wild. I wonder what ChatGPT has what thinks about that.
I don't know. It'd be nice to put it in there, but broadcasting live from here, you're going to hear the church bells. You're going to see people. You're going to hear people rolling by on roller skates, and they're all sitting here right now listening to all of you. So they heard everything that you said, Jessica, and they are using ChatGPT in the classroom.
Wild. So what's the first question, Craig? Whoops, he muted his mic. Can you hear?
Oh, sorry about that, George. For the panel, I want to know what your standing opinion is on friend or foe, meaning should we embrace or should we be afraid? And whichever you choose, tell us why.
I'll jump in on that. I think of any tool, whether it was electricity, as Jessica said, because at one time people thought, oh, electricity, it's not a good thing, right? We've been using lamp oils for forever, and what's going to happen there? And we think about the internet, right? The internet came on, and some people were like, this is amazing. And other people were like, this is not amazing. So when something new comes along, we have to just approach it like it's a tool. And if we think about it like a hammer, A carpenter can take a hammer and it can build a beautiful house. And somebody who is destructive can take that hammer and they can destroy that house. So it is neither good nor bad. It is only what we as human beings on planet Earth decide to use that tool for that gives it any kind of meaning whatsoever. So is it friend? Is it foe? I would say that it is up to each of us as individuals to make that decision. Let's hope we live in more of a utopia society where we can use it to better our work, to better our missions, to better our causes, to better things that we can do on planet Earth to enhance life. Obviously, we know there's a yin and the yang for everything, but I like to think of it as just a tool. It is neither good nor bad,
Beautiful.
and it's entirely up to us to make that decision. By the way, this is Jennifer Navarrete, the e-podcaster.
Yeah, and this is Dan. I'd love to build on that point, and I completely agree, especially in the education world. I just wanted to jump in kind of earlier because unfortunately I have to leave relatively soon. But since last week, since our last conversation, I've been reflecting on what Jessica brought to the table, and we had started by talking about ChatGPT as water, and then she brought in as electricity. And I was thinking, how can we think of this as all the elements? Well, it can be like fire because it can spread very quickly, and it can, potentially be destructive. But like Jennifer said, it's the context. It can be like earth. It can be grounding. It can. I've found it as earth for myself, just using it in the songwriting because it can kind of get me past that blank paper stress, of just, saying I have a deadline, I need an idea. Well, I'm going to use my brain. I'm going to give it some context. I'm going to have it give a lot of different options. And then I, as the artist, can come in and make some decisions and how to weave these together into something that tells a beautiful story. So I completely agree with what Jennifer said. You have to give it the context. And Jessica also bringing in context. So in the education world, what I am a little bit sad about is where seeing it be shut down. Because if you shut something down, that's going to send a signal that, hey, well, we need to just find a workaround, So students are going to get access to this. They have home lives. They have a lot of devices that can probably access ChatGPT and other AI. And so wouldn't we rather be, as educators, people that can model good use and model responsible digital citizenship of how to use it, how to use it to connect with people, rather than just saying, all right, student, child with a developing brain, you have no context for this because we're not allowing it in the classrooms, but go for it and see what you can do. So I think that can be a little bit of a dangerous mindset, at least in the education world.
Anybody else on the panel want to jump in and tackle this question? Jennifer, Samantha,
speaking
George?
of the education world, the Times had a recent article, I don't have it to pin to the nest, but talking about how educators are viewing it. And to a person, it may have been the reporter. It probably was the bias of the reporter. But they only reported on educators using prevention methods and detection methods rather than using it as an educational tool. And when they quoted the students were talking about not using it to cheat and copy, but they were talking about how it could enhance their understanding. So it really behooves the teachers to look at it the way Jennifer Navarrete talked about. It is a tool. A knife can kill people and it can cut your dinner. A tool is just a tool. But the educator should really look at how can it be used. It's like when the encyclopedias first came out, I'm sure teachers said, well, that we have to ban them because people can just copy out of the encyclopedia, and they did. Students do copy out of the encyclopedia, but other more intelligent students use it. Use it wisely. Let's say.
Yeah, I'll just add something there about the education system too, is that we're hearing a lot of banning going on in schools because of this new AI. And I get that people are not sure what to do with it. And I think I'd rather use the word like pause till they know what to do, as opposed to banning. As soon as you ban it, I swear they just all go
Of
home and
course,
try to find a
right.
way around. But I don't think what we all need to know is this AI is moving a lot faster than we can preempt it. And so what will happen is, so what they're doing is now creating they're creating AI to create watermarks so you can tell when somebody's been using AI for copyright reasons and plagiarism and for self uh for I can't think of the word at the moment, but I'll get it in a second. So what will happen though is there'll just be more software who will be able to just take out the watermarks.
Right.
So it's really just going to be a war of both. So there's really no use in trying to rely on these plagiarism apps that are going to be able to help the students or help teachers figure out which students are using them. So instead, we're just better off just embracing it. And I think that Jason Sawalski had a really good point last week for any of you who missed it. I mean, when spell check came in, the teachers were all up in arms. Well, how is anyone going to know how to spell? And eventually now they kind of get ticked off when people don't use the spell check. They're just like, dude, there's like a spell check. Why wouldn't you use it? And so they kind of get angry with it. So all technology has that abrasiveness, and what do we do? There's the shock system. And I'm going to tell you, it's adapt or die. That's just how it goes as humans. If you choose not to adapt and you're just going to push against it, well, you're going to be left in the dust.
Right.
Yeah, you can live that life if you want to, but I guess it depends what you want to do. So we need to really think about the fact that things of like we talk about the Renaissance. They say in the next 1 or 2 years, we will have more development than the entire Renaissance put together in 1 or 2 years. And so we need to embrace this and say, what are we going to do with this information? It used to be said that your predictability of being successful was really good writing skills, which is why we teach kids to read and write. However, I will say that the future belongs to those who are digitally literate. And so we need to switch the system for everyone and start teaching digital literacy.
Mm-hmm.
Samantha, you used two words there that their English teacher who's traveling with them from Cathedral Prep mentioned, the word pause and what you just said, digital literacy. And she said when they did their plans for the school year, which was in June, there was no talk at all of including ChatGPT or artificial intelligence in their curriculum. And as it got closer to the start of the school year in August, there was a groundswell. So their principal called a teachers meeting and they discussed it. So the English program there at the school, not just that school, but there's another teacher from Notre Dame sitting right on the bench with me, said that they're using it as a tool to teach them how to improve their skills. And they spend 10 minutes at the beginning of every 55-minute class, high school class, and 10 minutes of every 90-minute college class to teach people in the class or students how to use it. And they just go up and down the rows like we do when we're having a conversation, and everybody has to bring a topic for the day. If they get called on, they go up, they they type their topic in the computers that they have in the classroom, and then everybody watches AI spit back whatever the answer is. And they're teaching them how to talk to it so that they can use it as a personal assistant, so that they can use it to correct things
Wow,
that
that's really
might be in their thought process. So I think there's some people that are way ahead of the curve. And I mean, the other reason I wanted to do it from here is I know what happens here on the weekends. And I know over at O'Shaughnessy Hall, which is one of the biggest English labs, there are kids sitting out there right now, I know, listening to this because I met them early this morning to prep them. So it's starting to become a big thing here. And there's no restrictions, but their professors or their teachers are walking them through it in the first few minutes of every class. And one of the examples that I gave last week about my grandson's spelling words is a perfect example to talk to them today, because I asked for spelling words in alphabetical order. It kicked out the spelling words, but it didn't put it in alphabetical order. So I said, can you please put the spelling words you just gave me in alphabetical order? And the answer was, sure, I can do that. And then it spit it the same exact words in alphabetical order. So they watched that live example this morning while I was setting up for this, and they were just blown away. So they'll have.
Also can't. It doesn't seem to be able to count. In other words, if you say I want to tweet that that's less than 280 characters, it'll often go over. And now with the long tweets, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But it can't seem to get the counting straight.
Well, and we said last week, you have to check it because it's a text-based, format, and sometimes it's not real good at math.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you typed in right now, George, how many feet in a mile, it would be interesting to see what it came up with.
There's a new version now that has corrected a lot of that. It couldn't get the New York to Tokyo correct, and some people made interfaces to Wolfram Alpha. But now it's apparently taken another leap and is considerably more accurate. I think Jessica had something she wanted to say. She had her hand up. And
Go ahead, Jessica.
And lowered her hand.
I have a few thoughts on education, and this is just my kind of personal opinion. I think there's a lot of good that AI can do for education. One of them is scalability. Like I personally been using AI to learn more about coding. So imagine like an AI tutor that's available 24/7 and are able to answer your question or like help you guide you through the thinking process like a teacher would through Socratic method. So there's a lot of opportunity there. It's like all of us I think many of us have been changed because we had a good teacher. How great would it be if like we can scale that good experience using AI? And so that's one thought. And the second thought is I think I have a lot of empathy for a kind of educator who are like overworked and they work in a system that is really, really hard on them. And I heard from friends of friends, for example, like using AI to help them with lesson plans and even create some like creativity. I think a friend told me that his wife was trying to put together a lesson plan to teach kids about volume. And so she prompted the model to say, hey, create like, not only write out a lesson plan, but create an activity for the kids to learn. And then the AI basically split out, like have the kids go around the room and then like pick a stuff and talk about how you would measure that in terms of volume, right? And so being able to assist teacher to help them to educate and like help them with the workload that they have, I think it could be super impactful. And the third thing is I think a lot of my hypothesis about all these panic around the education space is I think it's because in the current education system, so much of the knowledge is about memorization and regurgitation. And I think we're moving to kind of a new paradigm where the AI can do a lot of that. So we're all panicking about, okay, so like if we can't test on memorization, regurgitation, like what does this new world look like? So I think there's a lot of thinking that's being done on, okay, so now what? Now AI can do a lot of that, right? And so in terms of what I think kids today need to learn, there are a few things. I think not only understanding how to use this tool, but I think it will be really great to have something that helps you to understand like the risk and bias around the model. So I think just like the hammer example that Jennifer shared, which is like, all right, you have a hammer, like what is the risk of using it? Like where does it fall short today? It's actually really good to have some sort of curriculum around that so that the student understand the power of the tool that they have. And my hypothesis around what is the new world today is that because the AI is not perfect, I would love to see today, like it's about kind of checking facts about understanding like where does it fall short. So an interesting exercise would be, I love that example of you pulling up a questions, right? Maybe pull up a very controversial question using ChatGPT during the beginning of the class, and then see what ChatGPT answers. And the class should have a conversation around what is majority opinion? How do you verify it's a fact or not? And if you don't know, how do you actually leverage technology to look for facts? How do you debate facts with your classmates? I think there's a lot more here around that literacy, on what truth is, how to leverage technology, and be able to have a healthy debate. I think that my hypothesis that's going to be really important in the coming months or years.
I love that.
Oh, Jessica, I love the stump the AI.
Yeah.
what a great exercise, a classroom exercise to say, let's see if we can stump the AI. And then, like you said, if it is stumped, then let's go find the right
Right.
answers.
Because
Yes.
it's not perfect today, right? It's just like us, we all have biases and limitation because of the information we're exposed to. It's the same thing with AI. You're going to find different opinions. So I think it's even more important to coach kids how to do debates, how to fact find, and how to be okay with people having different opinions. I think those are all such an important skill to
Also,
pick up than
also,
to memorize facts.
right. Also, picking up on what Jessica and Jennifer said, the one thing I would do if I were a teacher is I would present the students with something that was written by ChatGPT 3 or ChatGPT and say, what's wrong with what it just spit out? Because it's spitting out, and I put it in the nest. There's an amazing article from the New Yorker that I put in the nest. He is a um, computer professional, and it's unbelievably well written. He basically says that it's like it's like lossy compression. It's sucked up all the stuff that it's been trained on, and now it's storing it, and then it's giving it back like it's a JPEG file reconstructed, but it's many, many copies of the JPEG, so it doesn't quite get it right, and it often gets it wrong. For instance, I it's fantastic at giving you what's the conventional definition of something. So I put in cognitive dissonance, and it gave me a paragraph describing cognitive dissonance. But the last line of it refers to the mental discomfort that arises when a person's beliefs and actions are not in alignment. Well, yes, that's true as far as it goes, but that's not what cognitive dissonance is. That's just one example. It did get it right earlier and said that it's discomfort that occurs when a person holds two or more confirming beliefs, attitudes, values, or actions. So it did define it broadly, but then it gave the wrong summarization. So so if you're writing about a subject, you have to be very careful. It's a beautiful writer. It writes plausible stuff that could be dead wrong, or somewhat wrong, or subtly wrong.
On that note,
Yep.
George, I think that there are some underlying questions to ask. So if I ask ChatGPT a debate question like, "What is the meaning of liberty?" Okay, who wrote who put in that information? Were it libertarians? Was it, I mean,
Nobody.
what you're getting when you ask a
Mhm.
question in that it can spit you something that is grammatically correct, looks great. If you want to use it in a list or a letter, or it's grammatically correct, it looks good. So I think there's a danger for students, if we're talking about students, that they don't know if this is really the real thing, if this is the correct thing. And I started reading that article, George, in the New Yorker, and very
Yeah.
interesting. And with an anecdote of a blueprint for a house in Germany where the rooms were slightly different sizes, like 11 by 14, 9 by 12, 12 by 3, very similar. And what the example is that Xerox, it gave them the wrong, it made all the rooms 11 by 14. And it goes into how that can
Mm-hmm.
happen. I think that same thing can be, yes, you can tell your students to use it like you would, I think, like you would, ask Google to give you a list of the synonyms for hello, but that doesn't mean that that's the right list. And then the other big question I have, and maybe Jessica, you can answer that. Unfortunately, I missed the last week's, but with this idea of the genius in the room. So I have tried doing this as a creator with poetry, and it worked pretty well for a short. I gave it a specific prompt for a haiku. The a squirrel on the porch that's eating the last of the tomatoes, to cherry tomatoes, and it gave a decent haiku, But when I asked it to write in the style of John Milton or Shakespeare or let's say a writer, and an unknown writer, it doesn't know how to do that. So how is a student who has to compose is asked to compose a poem, and they go and they say Shakespeare-like poem, but they don't know who Shakespeare is. It's like seeing the Mona Lisa, but you don't really know what it looks, you don't know what it really looks like. So how does that work for a creator? And it makes me mistrust it because I don't see the value at this point. I mean, I don't know that it'll ever generate true great poetry or humor. So two big questions. One, how do you trust it? Who's writing it? And two, is that genius in a room for only certain purposes?
Rose, those are great points. And because we're about 40 minutes in, I'm going to reset the room and then we'll get back into the conversation. My name is Craig Mesowitz. I'm the host of this week's episode of The Conversationalists. We're a group of world-class experienced audio event speakers that create quality shows to encourage, debate, entertain, and educate. And our goal is always to have a great casual conversation as if we were sitting around the fire pit. We are talking about artificial intelligence today and ChatGPT, and I am broadcasting live from the campus of Notre Dame. So our panelists today are George Silverman, Samantha Postman, Jennifer Navarrete, Rose Horowitz, and Dan, who's listening because he had to get on the road. And one of our guests is Jessica Spee, and we're ready to get back into the conversation.
I want to pick up on what Rose said. I don't think it's going to write great poetry or what was the other example you gave? Humor. Yes, of course. Because both of those are heavily dependent upon emotion. It doesn't have emotion. It doesn't have feelings. So it's going to fall, I think, very short on that. On the other hand, it's a phenomenal way of prompting a poet or prompting analogical thinking and things like that. It could be absolutely fantastic for that, but it's not going to do that. And by the way, I put in what is liberty. It gave a very interesting one that I think the people on the extreme left wing or right wing or anywhere in between would agree with. What it's done is it's reached out. It hasn't been trained on a specific definition of liberty. It's been trained. It's read thousands of articles on liberty, and it gave a distillation, the first sentence of which is liberty refers to the state of being free within society free from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life, behavior, or political views. And it ends with it's considered an essential aspect of democracy and human rights. And so it really did give a decent distillation without the subtleties.
It doesn't have the subtleties.
Agreed.
I'd ask what is free years, right? What is free will?
Right. It'll give you the different. It'll say, if you ask it, what are some of the different views on free will, and you could say what are the considered to be the strongest arguments for free will, against free will. I've done that with the existence of God. It will give you, if you say, does God exist? It'll give you a bunch of mumbo jumbo crap about not being able to take sides and stuff like that. But if you say, what are some of the best arguments for the existence of God? What are some of the best arguments against the existence of God? You will get them. And if you ask it, you just say, without disclaimers, without preamble and postamble. It knows what the word postamble means, by the way, even though there isn't such a word. It can infer what it means. You say, just give it to me straight without a lot of explanation, and it'll give it to you. It will give you the best arguments that have been put forth. Or you can say, what are Thomas Aquinas's arguments for the existence of God? That'll give it to you. It'll summarize his whatever number of arguments there were, about 8 of them, very quickly and easily, and quite wonderful.
Correct.
Well, there's a lot of Catholic schools on campus here today walking around, and I have two more journalism teachers sitting here and a world history teacher. And the world history teacher was given the thumbs up while Rose was talking about, the pros and the cons and what they need to look for. She just wrote on the little napkin that I have here that I'm writing my notes on that they were going to come up with a scavenger hunt that was going to be based across the pond. So nothing in North America. It was everywhere but North America. So her students had an assignment. They had to each had to pick 3 places that they thought would be good place to include in the scavenger hunt. They compiled them all and they tallied them. So if Mykonos, Greece appeared 30 times, it got a number 30 by it. And then they came in and asked ChatGPT the same question. And they asked specifically, they said, we're creating a scavenger hunt. We want it to be a worldwide scavenger hunt to exclude North America. What are the 10 most exciting places we can bring people to have a scavenger hunt? And it spit out 10. So then they had a
She wrote all
discussion.
that on a napkin?
Oh, she told it to me while I was on mute, George. While I was on mute, she gave me 3 bullet points, and I'm taking them and running with them. So that's part of my job. So she said that it's going to be the rest of the semester. They're going to be working with ChatGPT on fine tuning this scavenger hunt that they want to have, and then they're going to present it to their administration for their senior project. As this is what we've done. This is what we've researched. Here's what's suggested. Here's the money we raised. We're going.
She is a genius teacher.
And Rose, I could jump on to answer the question around like what happened as a creative. You want to write something that
That's Jessica.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I'm just saying that's Jessica talking.
Thank you for answering, Jessica. I'm eager to hear your response.
So the model is trained on a large corpus of data, and so it will likely have very famous writers or very popular writers over time, like Shakespeare and so on. So if you ask it to write a poem in the format of X, Y, and Z that the model has data on, it will likely do a pretty good job at imitating that, even though there could be different story style. It could mean a lot of things, right? It could be your writing style, it could be how you tell a story, et cetera, et cetera. So that part is clear for, well-known, famous writer that it's trained on. But your question is on, well, what if I want, this to write in the style of George? And the model may not have a style.
God forbid.
Well, this will be interesting because a lot of people wants to use it here to write their own Twitter thread. I have a different set of thoughts for content publication, but just to answer Rose's question, so there's a technique called few shot that you can probably try, and let me talk about that approach and then talk about how you can use that. So that approach is the model.
Tell us how to spell it so I can write it down.
Literally few shot. The idea is that the model is actually a very good simulation and imitation machine with think about it as baseline knowledge of the world. So that goes back to the analyst analogy, right? So if you hire an analyst and you say, hey, analyst, can you write this poem in this theme in the style of George? What would you do? You would give this analyst maybe 10 or 20 or 30 example of what George written before, and the analyst will figure out the pattern or the usage of the style. It's actually very similar. Mm-hmm. The few shots very similar with GPT, which is you can say, write a poem in this style, this format, and then you basically just give it a few example of what that style looks like, just in case if your first zero shot of writing the style of George doesn't work out, you give it a few example of what George has written, and it could pick up George's style over time if George's style is strong enough. However, if George's style is more subtle, there's also a technique that requires a lot more data called fine-tuning, which is initially, 3-step process. Zero shot is just tell the model to say, write in the style of George. Few shot is to give a few example of how George writes, and then you just say, imitate the style below. And then if, let's say, somebody's writing could be really subtle, right? It's not easily picked up, there's also a much more advanced technique called fine tuning, where you show the model maybe like 100, 1,000 of George's example, and you tune the model in a way that from now on, the output will be so tuned that like it will always write in George's style. So that's kind of the.
Will it keep it in there? Will it keep it in there?
You basically retrain. You essentially like are kind of like fine tuning and retraining a model that will be yours, and it would just do that thing. But
do you have to put it in each time? You have to put in all those examples each time?
This is so if you put an example in the prompt that's called few shots, the fine tune you actually wanted it to access the API programmatically to show it like 100 or 500 or 1,000. That takes so much more work. Right. I really advise most people to stay at 0 shot or few shot realm. And like, I think in my mind, it only makes sense if you're doing this professionally or you have a scaled project that you know that these like few shot training are going to be valuable. And that's the approach. And then now let me talk about like, I think people are probably thinking, how do I do this, right? So there are different level of like tool access that you currently, oh, sorry, go ahead, Rose.
I just want to say I've tried the few shot without knowing that it is few shot, but I asked it to write in the style of John Milton's from Paradise Lost, and it didn't. So then I put in maybe 4 lines from Paradise Lost, and it spit back, and it wasn't anything really like, if I didn't know, it gave me flowery kind of what we think of as poetic language from that time, but it was nowhere near John Milton.
4 lines isn't enough.
What's that?
4 lines isn't even.
Well, no, not in.
Is not enough.
I can see it for if you're writing nonfiction about an evergreen kind of topic like happiness or well-being. But if you're creating poem or a humor or a novel, I wouldn't trust, I mean, maybe someday, but I don't see that now. And I can see that in a like a writing classroom, I've taught writing, that students will say, oh yeah, well, I just read this poem by Ogden Nash. It's funny. I'm going to put in 10 poems, but even, 10, I don't know who's going to put it, they're not going to put in 100, but they might think they have it, but they don't. And I think that's, as much as it can be a teaching tool, and Craig gave a fabulous example of how it's being used at University of Notre Dame, but there's inherent danger, and unless you, I think, teach students the danger in it, then then you're not really painting a full picture, and the more students can discern what can be done and what can't be done with the tool at this point, that's important.
I think
and Rose, go ahead.
I agree. I think that's why I think it will be really interesting to have a kind of a light course curriculum on education, right? What is the current risk, kind of the upside and the downside. But one thing that's worth mentioning is this technology is moving extremely fast too. So when designing that curriculum, it's not just like, oh, 1, 2, 3, these are the 3 risks. It's really guiding the student into understanding how to fact check, how to understand the underlying model and why it's different, why it's spitting out stuff. So I think, yeah, I in principle, I really do agree with you.
Hey, before we just, Jessica, before you give the example, which I'm like really anxious to hear about how exactly we do that, I just want to let people know in the room that how this usually works is we run a panelist conversation at the beginning, and then usually at the top of the hour, which will be happening pretty soon, we open it up for any questions. So those of you who have been requesting it to come up to the speaker stage, we will open that up a bit later. So I just wanted to let you know that we're not ignoring you.
Hang in there. Yep.
Yeah, hang in there. So just to let you know. And Jessica, I'm super, yeah, great. The reason why we asked Jessica up is because she literally works for an OpenAI. She works in the industry. And so she's essentially, we brought her up as a guest speaker today. So we're really honored to have her here. And so from here, like, we'd love to hear how exactly you're doing it, because like over the weekend, I tried something similar to what you were saying, mostly because George has been coaching me a little bit too. And I'm writing some copy for my new business consulting offer. And I wrote out mostly everything I wanted to put on the page. And I'm not the greatest writer. I'm okay at it, but I'm definitely not a copywriter. And so I asked George, I'm like, who are the top copywriters? And so he sent me a list, and I asked ChatGPT to take to take my writing and then rewrite it in the style of, and so one of them was Jay Abram. And then I did some other ones, and it was insane. Like literally, I almost fell off my chair. I could not believe how it took all of what I said, rearranged it, and like created this strong, persuasive copywriting voice while keeping the context of me in there. So I'm excited to hear about how we can start to train to use our voice so we can amplify our own selves as opposed to amplifying other people's voices.
Samantha, I can answer that question because you asked it to me last night and it was late. So we said, let's talk about it in the future. You can teach it who you are and what you want it to be by what you load into it. And if I go back to the example of my grandson's spelling words, because we've set the parameters and because each week we're asking it for 10 more, it has yet to produce a duplicate word. It has yet to fail us in terms of creating those 10 new spelling words. So then on top of that, he loves Dr. Seuss. He loved Jesse Jackson, who I don't know if everyone knows who that is, but Jesse Jackson read Green Eggs and Ham on Saturday Night Live, September 12th of either 2012 or 2015. So we loaded in Green Eggs and Ham, we loaded in The Cat in the Hat, and then he typed in the keyboard, write me a 4-stanza poem. He used the word stanza, and he said, here's the topics. And then he said, but I want it in the style of Dr. Seuss. And that damn thing within 2 seconds spit out a 4-stanza Dr. Seuss exactly like. And he giggled. He ran in to get my wife, who he calls Momo, and he goes, Momo, come here. Look what the robot did. So there are certain things that you can train it to do, and he's a yearner to be a learner. So at 7, when he comes on Thursdays, he knows he's getting 7 to 10 spelling words, anywhere from 4 to 7 letters. And I tricked him this past week, and I asked it to do 9-letter words. You should have seen his face. He's like, Papa, the whole rest of the class is only on 5-letter words. Can you do at least? I'll go 7. You go 7, I'll go 7. And it spit out 10 7-letter words, and then it put them in alphabetical order because that's what he's teaching it to do. He's teaching it to understand his spelling needs, and it is performing.
And then you can tell it to define each word. You can say, give a usage example of each word.
100%.
It will. You tell it exactly what you want. It great specificity. Also, I wanted to mention one other thing. If the best use case that I found a couple. I just want to talk about 2 specific use cases. One is that it is the world's best dictionary. It is absolutely unbelievable. If a dictionary is reporting common usage, it will define and describe a particular concept. And you can tell it, give me a 1-word, or give me a terse, or give me a simplified definition of X. And it will do that. It will give you the conventional wisdom definition. And sometimes it'll even give you confusions. If you ask it controversial words like selfishness, if you ask it for the different meanings, it will talk about rational self-interest versus hurting other people versus narcissism, basically. And so it'll make those distinctions. And here's the thing that's really amazing. I used to use One Look reverse dictionary. I think I maybe mentioned this before. It was my go-to thing. I would use it all the time as a writer. I'd have a concept and I just wouldn't have the right word for it. And a thesaurus doesn't quite do it. But the reverse dictionary, you give it the definition and it gives you the word. With GPT-3 or ChatGPT, what I do is I give it the sentence I want to use with the best word I can think of. which is a terrible word. And let's call that word X. So X is in the middle of my sentence. Then I say to it, give me several other words to replace X in the previous sentence. So now it's giving me synonyms contextually that fit in that sentence or in that paragraph. And it's so dead on, it's spooky. You really think there's like an intelligence behind it. It's just amazing for doing that. So if you want words, if you want to use it as it is absolutely the world's greatest thesaurus and reverse dictionary. But here's the thing that really excites me. Ghostwriting. It's my ghostwriter. I've used the ghostwriter a few times, usually with varying degrees of satisfaction, mostly dissatisfaction. What you have to do with the ghostwriter is give the ghostwriter a very, 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 very detailed outline. So you practically have written it yourself. And they will then take it and put it into flowing, wonderful English. Well, GPT-3, or I keep calling it GPT-3, that's what I've been using, but ChatGPT does a masterful job of that. And I have what I say to it is the following. I want you to act as a copy editor who's an expert best-selling writer. I will give you a detailed outline or text, and you will answer in the corrected and improved version of my text or outline. I want you to replace my simplified level words and sentences with more beautiful and elegant upper level English words and sentences. Keep the meaning the same, but make them more literary. Use markdown formatting with bold and italic, as well as headings and subheads. Only reply the article, the improvements, and nothing else. You can leave out the preview and post-view text. Do not write explanations and disclaimers. Here is my outline / text, : and I put in my outline. It could be a whole page long outline, and it will write me unbelievably beautiful text that I then can't take as face value. You got to look at it really carefully and put it into your own voice. But it is saving me so much time as a writer. You've got to be careful though. One caveat. One last caveat, don't get lazy. The gigantic temptation to say, wow, that looks good, plunk it in and go on to the next thing. If you do that, your writing will be really sloppy and it's going to really get off track very quickly. You must stay conscious when you do this.
George, can I add on to what you just shared? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sure, Jessica. Yeah, Jessica.
I just want to quickly add on to what George just said instead of prompting. I'm sure George read out this long list of prompt and everybody probably is kind of glazing over. What's really interesting, I like to dissect that a little bit, is that ChatGPT or GPT in general should really be your assistant, your skilling mechanism. It should not replace you, right? Like you don't really want it to write a really robotic answer because like I think in this new world, your brand and your voice is so important. That's something that AI can't replace. What's really interesting about George's approach is this like really thoughtful way of giving context is actually the way to do prompting. And you might be thinking, well, that's a lot, but like actually ask stupid question, you will still get stupid answer. So clarity of thinking is still very, very
garbage in, garbage out.
It's still very much the case. So like if you can't, like, I really love how George really clearly defined based on his taste what good looks like for him and then give the outline. And I think that's the right way of thinking when you're doing these prompting that you plan to scale, which is you should have a clear picture of what good looks like and what good taste is for you, articulate it in a very thoughtful way in the example prompt that George shared. And that is how you get good quality output. And then you can provide that prompt and then in the context, you can then add like, use these styles, or you can add like modifiers, but being really thoughtful about what you're asking it, being really particular, share your taste, and then ask it to output. I think it's a really smart way of getting the best result you're looking for.
Also, you can argue with it, or you can, and you are not going to hurt its feelings. So you can say, I like this part of it. I think this other part is garbage. Can you rephrase it? Or it's garbage because of X. So rephrase it, leaving out such and such, or whatever it is. You can even ask if a divergent things like I had it define cognitive dissonance, and then I said, give me a bunch of things to write about cognitive dissonance that nobody else has ever written about, or that's written about very, very, very rarely. Keep in mind, it's read what all the psychologists have said about cognitive dissonance. So I'm asking it to give me what hasn't been written about. And it gave me 10 things, 9 of which were garbage, but one of which was we don't talk enough about the differences between individuals in their degree of cognitive dissonance. And I said, whoa. Now, I've read the whole field, a great deal of what's written in cognitive dissonance, and that is not a thing that is addressed very much. Why do some people get really upset over contradictions and other people don't? That was an original idea that I can now grab and run with. Since I know the literature, I can know when I'm repeating back what other people said, or whether I have something new and unique to contribute. So that's the way to really use it. Say, you can even say, give me some stupid ideas. Give me some illegal ideas, although you have to be careful how you ask that, because it won't give you things that are named as illegal. But that's a really good creative technique. Give me unworkable ideas on X that I can work on and try to make feasible later. It'll give you nonsensical ideas, which is fantastic for brainstorming.
So, Craig, you said that you had 3 questions for us, and we have spent an hour talking about just your first question. And I think that really goes into just how complex and also how exciting and innovating that this new field is, which is why there continues to be multiple conversations around this, and there will be more conversations. And I think probably what folks can get from the AI conversations that we, the conversationalists, have had is really that it's a field that is changing constantly. And as we learn it, it learns us. And there is no hard set in stone, this is the way. George just gave an amazing example. By the way, folks, if you want to go back to the transcript or go back and listen to it, it was, I think it was like 5 minutes till the top of the hour. And you can kind of just listen to how detailed he was, apply it to your own
I can post the
things.
transcript, actually. I'm doing an open AI, an Otter AI transcript, so I'll go get
Beautiful.
it. Post
There
it.
you go, folks.
Yeah.
Copy, paste, and then adjust it to your style. Jessica said he is very detailed in what he wants. Take that same template of the detail, but apply it to your own self, and then just see what happens. We're all experimenting every single time we prompt ChatGPT or any AI, whether it's Midjourney, any art, we're learning. So if you have been sitting on the sidelines thinking, oh, I don't know about this, it's a little scary, baby step your way into this. Hopefully this conversation and other conversations like this will encourage you to take that first step for yourself. The results that we all have is very personal. We're sharing what can be done for you, but learn it for yourself. Figure out your own style and have your own understanding of how it works for you.
Well, and the one thing I'd like to add to that with George's specific example, and Jessica, chimed in, the more specific you are with it, the better the output for you to look at and kind of massage. And the example that I gave or was going to give is if you just create a 200-word story about love, the theme is Valentine's Day, it's going to spit out a 200-word story. You might have to count it because, like George said, it's not real good at math. But if you wanted to be more specific and get a better story, you would say, create a 200-word story about love set in New York City Central Park. Male character is Larry, female character is Lucy. Include the words sunshine, chirping, kissing, and Sunday. End the story with the phrase, will you marry me? So that changes it completely. And now that I've given you that, here's what it's going to spit out. And then I'm going to ask Sam a question and we're going to open it up to questions. So it titled it Love Proposal in Central Park. It was a beautiful Sunday morning in Central Park with the sun shining brightly and the birds chirping a melodious tune. Larry and Lucy were strolling hand in hand, taking in the sights and the sounds of the park. They had been dating for a while and their love for each other was stronger than ever. As they sat on the bench and watched the world go by, Larry couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by his love for Lucy. He leaned in for a kiss, and she reciprocated with equal passion. The warmth of the sunshine and the sounds of nature seemed to melt away their worries, and all that was left was their love for each other. As they continued to walk through the park, Larry was itching. He knew he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Lucy. He took her by the hand and led her to a secluded spot on the west end, where he got down on one knee and looked up at her with tears in his eyes. Lucy, he said, I love you more than anything in this world. Will you marry me? Lucy's eyes lit up and she threw her arms around his neck, kissing him with all the love in her heart. Yes, yes, I will, she exclaimed, as they embraced in sunshine and the chirping of the birds in Central Park.
Whoa.
That's awesome. That's really crazy. That's great.
So to you, Samantha, you gave a great example last week about someone passing and you were short for time and you loaded the obituary into ChatGPT and tell us what happened.
Yeah, usually I write a handwritten card from someone close who's lost a parent or something. And so this was a very extensive obituary notice. The mom had been 101 and lived a big life. And so I literally just threw in the obituary and asked it to write a poem. And then I said, make sure you concentrate on, and then I just, added in the names because it's got a lot of information in it. It was a really long obituary. And at the end, and so yeah, I produced this beautiful poem specifically for Joanna, who had passed away. And yeah, there was one paragraph that wasn't quite right. And so I asked it to rewrite that paragraph and told it what to put in it, and then rewrote it again. And I think the whole thing was maybe 6 minutes. And I quick ran it off the printer, cut it out, and I copied and pasted it and wrote Samantha Postman in ChatGPT and cut it out and put it inside the card. And it just really hit home to the family because it was just the lady who passed away was very poetic, and so were her children. They're very creative. And so they just thought it was, and they're older too, so they didn't really know about ChatGPT that much. But it's just a lot of ways that you can use to 10 times yourself. So it was my voice in a way, is my sentiment. I wanted to honor the family. I chose what to make sure was important, which was listing the children's names, which I wanted to make sure was in the poem. And it just showed that I went the extra mile. Was it completely my voice? No, but it was my amplified voice. And I think that's what's important to recognize here. So, yeah.
That's awesome, Samantha. We have to leave time for the listeners to ask questions. We are 20 minutes left in this week's edition of The Conversationalist. It's been a great conversation so far. And like Jennifer said, we've only really tackled one of the questions today. We've given a lot of live examples, but because that's how fast this is evolving. I mean, earlier I used the teacher's example here that she didn't even have it in her lesson plan. And by the time school got close, it was apparent she needed to put it in her lesson plan. So it is emerging fast. We are going to open it up for questions. And I'm not sure, because of where I'm at, who was first raising their hand. So if anybody knows the order of speakers and you want to pull them up one at a time, or the guest listeners, I'm all for letting you do that.
We can just let people jump in.
Well,
we'll let Dan go first. He was waiting the longest, and then AI law was next.
Dan, are you ready?
Hi. Yeah, I was really enjoying the conversation. I wondered if anyone has any concerns about like security as to like where the inputs go.
Hi, I do. Yeah, I think that if you're I've spoken with Andrew Bartona who about this, and she's helped. She writes some movies, and they're afraid to use it because they don't want somebody else taking their writing and saying it's theirs. So anything you put in that's your own words is going to, it seems to me that the whole point of it is to regurgitate it in some way. And so if you have an original, let's say, use 2 words that are really amazing, or 3 words, or the title for something, and then it goes into GPT. Well, it's not yours anymore.
Does Jessica have something to say about that?
Yeah, a few things worth noting is that OpenAI is not necessarily training on the data in the same way that you're thinking about it as like taking your words. Um, there's also a few levels. So for ChatGPT, what you are sharing may or may not be used to make a better model, but you can also use the underlying technology, just the different GPT engines where you can play in the playground and access it through API. You can actually request to have your data removed and not be used in the training set. So you actually have all those levers and you can make those requests.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay, who's next?
Thank you for the opportunity of asking the question, Vicky.
Thanks, Dan. Who'd like to jump in? Who was next? Samantha was keeping track of it.
Yeah, I didn't track all of them. I just the first few because they've been there a while. So
Yeah.
AI law would be, let's go with you next, and then after you, Jesse.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
So great conversation, guys. A few things I made some points. So I feel like, if you're a teacher in a university, college or school, I feel most of the teachers that I'm listening to, they're in denial. And what it reminds me of is when the Industrial Revolution was coming in, we had Luddites who were doing weaving through hand, which was a very hard job to do, and not everybody could do it. And it was something that they would pass on through generations. And the Industrial Revolution made them irrelevant. And I feel like that's the same thing that's happening with a lot of educators. And I would like to end it with the point from a third world perspective, which I did at least not heard it when I joined it. We have kids. I'm speaking on behalf of India at this point, right? We have kids who have some kids who have access to internet, but the teachers who are teaching them they have outdated knowledge because they were not taught from their teachers to start off with. So, when we talk about AI and we talk about how these things are changing from a student's perspective, if I have to take, say, $50,000 worth of loan to study from subpar teachers, which I think even in the developed world, many teachers are subpar. They have racial biases, personal biases, just stressful days some days. And so as a student, if I have to invest that money and then compete with other students who have gone through the same churn to get a job, I think the system itself is similar to what happened to Luddites. The truth is kind of swaying the future students differently. Then I also heard there was a speaker here from OpenAI, which I'll leave the question for later on. But guys, think about it this way. If you give a country a calculator in 2023, if it was created today, and another country, the same calculator in 2024, the country that has the calculator will become developed much faster.
Yep.
So when we talk about OpenAI, I mean, what's open about OpenAI? It doesn't have access to the whole of world. The lady earlier said that if you want to remove some data, you can request it. Who are we requesting it to? Why is there a central authority? Are we creating further problems that we created 50, 60, 80, 100 years ago when there was industrial revolution happening? By not giving this technology or not giving access to the technology to the third world countries. I mean, we're talking about AI. 1/3 of the world doesn't have access to internet. So we have bigger problems to solve. But we are having a conversation about how the grammar is not right and how we should check AI and how we should look at it from a point of view from a kid in Africa. And last point, sorry, I'm a little bit passionate about it, is think of it from the perspective of what it's going to do a year from now. If all of us are surprised and did not see this revolution coming right now, then why are we not taking it in a way that a year from now, we don't know what's going to happen? So rather than trying to control it and measure it, why not embrace the technology, give it to the third world the way it is, open it up so that people can all advance together. And the same thing doesn't happen, 5 years down the road that Africa or some other country is always left behind because we have to pay $8 or $10 to get onto or get some Microsoft AI and all that stuff. So that's my few cents. Thank you for listening to me.
Thanks. A lot of provocative thoughts.
Can I just respond to a part of that? I love your passion, by the way, and you're super intelligent speaker, so thank you for your contribution. I think that this maybe, I don't know, I'm a little struggling whether I want to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. What happened in school systems, just even in advanced countries, is that we've moved to the system where the very top 20% and the top 20 and the bottom 20% get all of the attention. And I wouldn't even say it's the top 20%. But what has happened, in my personal opinion, is that we've actually pulled back the progress, the acceleration of progress, because we've moved to concentrating a lot on the ones that are struggling or not keeping up. I have a different point of view. I think that if we focus, we spend a lot of time on the top 40-50%, they will automatically bring the rest up with them. Now, some people will say, no, the other ones will get left behind, but I don't actually think that's true. Like, look, and an example I'm going to use is Elon Musk. So here's Elon Musk, and I get that we're not all Elon Musks, but here we have someone who's absolutely brilliant with major resources, and he accelerated, and he took his acceleration and used his innovations to bring internet to Ukraine when they weren't able to have it. So then he was able to bring them up with the rest of the world very, very quickly.